All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Rowan Cook. I make coffee on the internet.
And I'm Ben Bignell. I judge people who make coffee, but only at competitions.
And together we are It's Just Coffee! The podcast for people who know it's never just coffee. Now, Benny boy, I spend a lot of time going around Melbourne's cafes all around the world, really. And I'm drinking Colombian coffees left and right. I'm enjoying all these amazing flavor profiles. I'm paying top dollar for them. But it's kind of stupid. It's a little embarrassing. I never actually stop and think about the cafe culture and roastery culture in Colombia. I mean, I think about like growing, but I don't think about the actual coffee culture there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. It is a far distance away from ye old Melbourne, but I think a lot of people don't kind of have that perspective. You know, we think of it as over there, somewhere far away, and we kind of think really just about, you know, amazing hillside landscapes full of coffee trees. But there is an incredible amount of energy at the moment in coffee-producing countries, including Colombia, for cafes, roasteries, like all of these amazing coffee professionals on the up and up. And it's pretty cool movement.
Yeah, and it's so cool to think about like growing that value in the origin, like in the country itself.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to talk about today. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. This is a really interesting space of like how do coffee professionals who work within those spaces kind of progress their career? How do they build businesses? But certainly, as you said, it's about how do we keep more of the value that's around coffee and more of the expertise really centered in coffee producing countries.
And luckily, we've got someone in the studio who lives and breathes this world.
Yes, Mr. Carlos Escobar, educator, roaster, community builder, amazing. This guy has spent so many years of bridging the gap between his experience in producing countries and consuming markets. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for the invite. Super happy to be here.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to have a quick word from one of our sponsors, Apex Lab. Elevate your coffee experience with Apex Lab Mineral Concentrates. Apex Lab's precision-engineered formulas, including tonic, jam, and lilac, are designed to enhance the coffee's natural flavors. Not going to change it, it's just going to enhance it. It's going to bring out the vibrant acidity, the rich sweetness, or if you use lilac, it might bring out those delicate floral notes that you've been looking for. Trusted by world-class cafes and even barista champions, Apex Lab helps you unlock your coffee's full potential. Discover more at apexlab.com. Wait, where was that again, Sonam?
The internet.
Oh, okay. Thought I was going to say the website. Thanks.
We put so much effort into our espresso, dosing, distributing, tamping, weighing. But then in so many cases, a cafe will just take whatever milk they happen to have available and throw it in and call it a day.
I know, and milk actually makes up 70% of all coffees ordered. So you could argue that great milk is just as important as great coffee.
Definitely could argue that.
Oh, I couldn't, I did.
Our great sponsors of the podcast, Riverina Fresh, have a milk that is made for coffee specifically, and it's used by some of the best cafes around the country and, in fact, World Barista Champion.
Yeah, this gold range that they actually have here was designed alongside a World Barista Champion to be richer and more indulgent to pair perfectly with coffee.
If you want to check it out, they are doing a sweet deal for Australian-based cafes, and you can get a free trial.
That's exactly right. You can get a free trial straight to your door. Just head to riverinafresh.com.au and see if your cafe is eligible. And why wouldn't you? Serve up the same milk as World Barista Champions. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups. They got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good.
Super happy always to be back in Australia and, well, glad I'm here with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've come over from Colombia, but you've spent a lot of time in Australia before that, working and that kind of thing. What is it like coming back to Australia after spending more time in Colombia? What's it like looking at the coffee landscape here with fresh eyes?
Look, coming back to Australia always feels like coming home. This is my second home, right? But yeah, I think now working in Colombia and coming back to Australia, it feels different because now you kind of like see the cafe culture, the coffee culture in the country with other eyes. Before I was working in Australia and visiting Colombia, right? Now it's the opposite. And yeah, it's interesting how you start seeing like, wow, things are changing. Or before I used to see the Colombian market with very Aussie eyes. Now I see how maybe origin countries or Colombian industries are progressing and, like, wow, like we're catching up and it's great.
Is there anything that kind of like ticks you off now, like annoys you looking at like Australian coffee culture or not really?
Yes, there's one thing in particular, which is maybe something I would like to talk about later on, but I can tell you even from right now.
Oh, no way. Is this, am I already tapping into a hot take? Is that
well,
what
it could be something around that?
Let's hold it off then. Let's just keep that one locked in the chamber. This is called sizzle.
Yeah, as we have this whole conversation, we know there's a rage burning inside.
Yes. No, actually, no. Look, I love Australia. I love the culture here. It's something to admire, and not only like someone from origin, but from any other country in the world, is the not only the coffee culture, but the cafe culture in Australia. I think that is second to none in the world still, how it's very deep inside the Australian life to go and have breakfast at the cafe, have a meeting at the cafe, have lunch at the cafe. Like those are things that are so common or normal here, but when you go to other countries, coffee shops are not seen as that, are not seen as a breakfast point or as a lunch point. It's like, no, like you go to restaurants to that. Coffee shops, you go to have coffee only. So it's very transactional. Here is more like experience. It's an experience, which when I see that, it's like, oof, man, like that is amazing. And if other countries would do something similar to that, the industry can only grow and grow and grow and grow.
Yeah. And as our travels, as we go around places like we were just in Italy and that, like you see the places that are doing that kind of brunchy service with like the mix of both. And I don't think I've been to one that doesn't look like it's absolutely killing it. Like that looks like it takes off wherever it happens. But I think, we're very spoiled for choice here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, Carlos, you've had a huge range of experience, obviously. Can you tell everyone a little bit about like what was your journey into coffee and then into Australia and back to Colombia? What was that like?
Okay, I'll try not to take long.
60-second timer starts now.
Okay, so look, I come from a coffee farming family. That's, I think, a big background. But for all the climate change, pricing crisis, and everything that happened in Colombia in the coffee crisis years, and my family pretty much went bankrupt with coffee due to coffee, right? And I think the bigger you were, the harder the whole crisis hit. So we lost it all. We lost the lands. We lost everything.
And you were quite big?
Yeah, kind of. We were like medium size, but medium size for the region where we are in Colombia was decent size. And to give context to the audience, so I grew up, or my parents kind of like talked to me, or always the message was like, go study anything you want, but coffee or farming or agriculture, or like, do not stay in anything related to farms. Just pick anything you want. You want to be a doctor? Be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, but go do city job, a corporate job. That was seen by them as success. With all they did it with good intentions, and of course understanding that we went like from living very good to living like doing it all, right? So clearly they didn't need to say anything. I saw it and I was like, I want nothing to do with farming, or like that's bad. That's struggles, poverty. Now that I see it from the outside, it's like, how sad is that? And what I'm telling you here is what like hundreds of thousands and thousands of Colombian farmers' family. Like that's the norm. From a farmer, you just go and tell your kids, do not. Just like we work hard so you can go and do something else. So I went to uni. I'm an engineer. Finished my degree. Hated it. Started to work as an engineer. Clearly not for me. Then I had the opportunity. I'm very lucky and very fortunate. I had the opportunity to leave the country. And then I picked the farthest away from family and that. What I was looking for was like, I was not only looking for somewhere to go and study, I wanted like the life experience of being far from home, no friends, no family, no like a big circle or like support thing, right? Like I wanted like, hey, I want to know how it is to do it on your own. And so Australia, like that was like 14, 15 years ago. Like back then was very different for immigrants, was very different for Latinos. There were very little, a very small Latino community in Australia. Still is, but 15 years ago, like very, very small. So in Australia, that was kind of one of the first shocks that I had. Like I come from Colombia. Coffee means poverty, means is not, is not something nice. And then you come in the cafe culture in its boom, in cool places. Everyone talks about coffee. Everyone wants to drink coffee, know about coffee, coffee experts, coffee professionals. Because the word by then was like coffee professional. What is a coffee professional? Like working in coffee, fuck, that's embarrassing in my country. Now here was a cool thing. And the hardest thing to see was tasting a Colombian coffee and actually saying, actually so good. Back in Colombia, the coffee is rubbish. The coffee is actually not bad. It's terrible. Like no one likes it. Everyone drinks it, but drinks it just for the sake of drinking it. It's like water. You don't enjoy the taste of water, but you drink it because you need to. That's kind of how coffee was seen back in the days. And then you come here and it's everything delicious. And it's like, wow, that's so different. So just to cut the story, I got into coffee. I started literally like cleaning tables, but seeing that the barista was the one that used to talk the most. So I was like, I want to be that. Learn about coffee. And then by things of life, I don't know, I got a job with the coffee company that was selling the coffee to the restaurant I was working on. And I took it from there and I built all my career in the sales side of the coffee industry. So people think I was always like into making coffee, but not. Like kind of like my whole background was in the sales aspect of it. And it was, it turned then into a little bit corporate, or not corporate only, but like very structured in sales management. So I started as a rep, then a regional manager, then this, until being the national sales manager from quite big companies and managing big teams of sales coffee people.
How did your friends and family feel when they called and they're like, oh, how's Australia? What are you doing? You're like, oh, it's great. I'm working in coffee.
That's a great question. That was very funny.
Yeah, what?
Well, that was kind of my dad, like, coffee. But why? Just why?
The one thing we said not to do.
Exactly.
Why do you forsake me?
But then when they started to see that I was kind of like growing or evolving, or all the stories of like, hey, but here is a thriving industry. And hearing that, they were actually quite surprised as well, but super happy to see it. And like, wow, so coffee is just this sentence, coffee is a thriving industry. Back in the days, for Colombians, were like, nah, that's crazy to believe. How sad is that, right?
So you came to Australia. You obviously made such a name for yourself here working in coffee, but then you've gone back to Colombia. What are you doing over there? What was the choice behind doing that?
So I went back and I founded Differente Coffee, which is Differente, exactly. So it's a coffee brand, roasting coffee at origin. And the mission or the vision is like to change the perception of coffee roasted at origin. But not only that, it's only leaving some of the best Colombian coffees in Colombia. So as I just said, in my whole journey here, one of the biggest things were like the good Colombian coffee is always found here in consuming countries. But in Colombia, is the defective beans, the like very low quality coffee was consumed in Colombia. It's still in the big part of Colombia still consumes very bad coffee, but that is changing. And this is kind of what Differente aspire to do. Like, hey, yes, it's a little bit more pricey than what we get in Colombia, but we really want to offer some of the best produce to the Colombian market.
Yeah, amazing. I
Mhm.
mean, I didn't even think about that. If you're saying that, like, however long ago Colombia, what they were drinking was just terrible, then reshifting that mindset. What an amazing thing to look at your own agriculture and produce and being like, oh man, we're killing it. This is amazing.
Yeah.
That's such a cool project. And let me just ask you, so I feel like we throw out a lot of terminology in like the coffee industry and it all kind of loses meaning. We talk about like value at origin. You briefly touched on it. Can you tell us what value at origin means to you?
That's a great question. Look, I think I'm a big believer that value needs to be shared in the whole chain. It cannot be only at origin, it cannot be only at consuming countries. In order for the industry to be sustainable, everyone needs to get a piece. The key thing here is to make the piece of each player not considerably way bigger than the rest. That's when things stop working. For years, it was like that. So we have a pie, and producers had, no joking, like less than 10% of the whole pie. And the 90% of the value was divided in the rest of the chain. Export, you call it like, now I see it from the point of view of the producer. I don't care where it goes. It's just 10%, 90%. Man, that's just not, doesn't make any sense. Now, to me, value at origin is transferring some of that big piece of cake to all the players at origin, not only the producer. Okay, here some people are gonna, like lift their eyebrows. Every part of the chain there is important. The exporter is very important. Not every producer can get their coffees out of the country. The logistics company, the quality control, not every producer has access to or the knowledge to assess their quality. So there are lots of professionals. So now finally, we are talking about coffee professionals at origin. That was a term, I'm talking about vocabulary and terminology, that was, I think, only of producing countries. But origin was farmers, and all the coffee pros are here. Now we have quality control, logistics, brewers, baristas, developing profiles, processing experts, farmers, clearly. Anyway, there's multiple.
Do you think that difference is why historically all of the value, like culturally and financially, has stayed outside of origin?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I think the big thing was like coffee coming from a commodity market background. It was seen as that, as like coffee's coffee. Then the whole value is in how you sell it, how you got it, how fresh, how quick, but never about how you produce it, never about like to differentiate this product was never the goal. I think that is changing clearly in the last years. Now the whole focus is changing into how do you differentiate this part, and the rest, it will just go by itself, right? So that big shift is changing resources and expertise and interest back to origin, because the only way to differentiate the product is at origin. You cannot differentiate the product from here, right? So, yeah, I think the problem came from that because there was a big vision of everything was about quantity, but not quality. And the countries, the producing countries, in their best interest was just to produce more, not better, just more coffee. And the trend of the market is now asking not only for quantity, but like, hey, can it be better?
So would it be right in, I guess, summarizing that, Carlos, in saying that, part of the shift here is perspective, so that, well, not perspective, that's probably the wrong word, but it's kind of an understanding, or am I trying to say here? It's kind of like the idea that, producers and coffee professionals at origin didn't see the consuming market or the cafe market in the consuming space as the experience you had, right, when you moved to Australia, and you're like, wow, look at all this amazing energy, this kind of investment, this excitement, this value that's being created around coffee, that perspective wasn't there for kind of producing kind of country coffee professionals. And so they couldn't necessarily see like, where could we go with this value? What could we capture out of the process? Is that kind of correct?
I think that's exactly what it is. Like,
And look at like France making wine, man. That they know what they're making. They know that they're like, this is the best, and they're like, we make the best wine in the world, and they send it everywhere. But like to have Colombians like turn around and be like, we make the best coffee in the world, and I'm proud of it, and I drink it at home, and you guys are also lucky to have it.
So to me, you just touched something there. That's one of my, let's say, not goals only, but like the vision, or say, a dream, is that like in France, being a wine producer, winemaker, hey, what do you do? I'm a winemaker. And that's
So
something
cool.
to be proud. And immediately, like, wow, are you a winemaker? And with the accent in French. And
Je déteste la poisson.
yeah, petit appetit. You're going to hear that sentence in a while very soon. But anyway,
We love you, Simon.
there's no such a thing as that in Colombia. Like in Colombia, kind of until the last 5 years, what do you do? A coffee producer, and it's something not to be proud of. And so now, to rephrase all these, Ben, to get back to your point, is now some of the goals of the whole industry should be about making the producer. When I say that, that can be kind of a hot take, but that's not my hot take. Just
hit it with it.
But like the producer should be the brand. Right now, all the branding is in the roaster, technology maker. All the transformation happens after the producer. I think a shift in the industry that is happening, it's just starting, but if you ask me, that's where we are heading, is that we are heading into a industry where the producer is the brand.
Yep. And what are you seeing that's kind of giving you hope that is starting to shift?
Seeing successful cases, right? Like clearly, for example, Panama producers are like an example of what marketing and branding applied into coffee farming, right? Big admiration for what they do, big respect to what they do. And well, look at the response of the markets. Like, look at the prices they get every single year. There's a lot of people that are against that, pro that. Hey, regardless whether you support that or not, why there's such a big noise when we talk about high prices for coffee, but in wine, you don't see anyone being crazy about and saying they should not pay that much for the best wine in the world. For that, there's no issues. But because it's coffee, that's overvalued. Well, man, like in every industry, pretty much the premium products could be seen as overvalued. But that's where is branding. That is brands. And this is where producers become a brand. And
I was actually going to challenge you on the branding thing, but then as you bring up that Panama side, it is so true that, because I was like, it's a hard one because you produce it and then there's not many products where it's like you produce it, send it, and then there's another full process of like roasting and stuff that changes, how it's going to taste as well. But you're right. The Panama's are the one where it's regardless of the brand and cafe you go into, that coffee is a brand on its own. So you're right. It can be done and has been done very successfully.
I think you mentioned something there super important. And I think that's also a shift that we have seen in the industry in the last decade or so, or decades. The transformation. That's the key word here. That's where the value transfers, right? Now, back in the days, the Italians and European roasters, that's where the value was, and that was their branding and marketing strategy. A master roaster, our master blend, our secret blend. It was a secret. It was seen as a secret. And what do you do? I cannot tell you as a secret. We know now that is no such a thing. However, have a look at that. Have a look like it was transforming the product. What they were selling was just the blend, the roasting. We're roasting our own style. I cannot tell you the profile because that's where the flavor and the value is. We are now seeing a change, a shift in the industry where now, if we talk about roasting, it's such a big thing, has evolved so much in the last years. But roasting is now not about changing or transforming much all the way around. Good roasting or expert roasting is seen as the one that does not change the product.
Yep.
So now when we have that shift, before we used to think, doesn't matter where we have, all the magic happens here. Now the industries doesn't matter what you do here. The magic is what happens here. This is transferring value to origin. That's
well said. Well said. Hey, Ben, you know how I'm not very smart? I'm going to ask.
I don't know that.
I'm going to ask a very stupid question, but I'll do it anyway. In Colombia, like, how much are they drinking other coffees from other regions? Like, can you go around in Colombia and just be like, I'm just smashing an Ethiopian?
No, sadly, to be honest. Like, look, okay, I have different views on that, right? Like, clearly, the Colombian government protects the farmers, not letting other origins get into the country. But then the impact of that is, consumers do not have access to anything else. So all you find in Colombia is Colombian coffee. And again, touching back on the first topic, what's the Colombian coffee you find in Colombia? What is not exported? What is not exported? The lowest quality. Not because they didn't want to, because they couldn't. So the government also, or the FNC, the National Coffee Federation, something like that, put some quality standards like if it has this number of defects or this cannot be exported because we don't want people around the world drinking a terrible coffee and saying that is Colombian coffee. So that is actually super important to protect the image and brand of Colombian coffee. Big supporter of that. Now, there's a lot of coffee that you produce, let's make it easy, 100 kilos. Out of those 100 kilos, there will be some that are defective, right? Like in any other organic product, you produce bananas and you have 100 bananas and some will be, bad looking, bad tasting bananas, right? What happens to those bananas? In other industries, well, you say, let's make banana bread or let's throw it away. Now that's not good for consumption. In Colombia, it's like, well, with that, Colombians need to drink coffee, right? So that's for the local consumption.
So how important is it for you then to be bringing up that standard then? If you can only drink Colombian coffee, there needs to be a higher celebrated standard of what's there. Right. Is it a weird thing for the baristas or like someone wanting to push that career not to be able to have that openness of trying all these different coffees? It's an interesting...
Great point. And it's like a yes and no answer. Sorry for that because it's not very specific. But look, it's clearly... It limits you to one origin, but this is where it's a very specific country condition, which Colombia has so much diversity in varietals, origins. So just so you know, like here as a matter of context, Colombia is one of the few countries in the world, producing countries in the world that you could find coffee all year round. When I say find, it's like producing country, fresh coffee all year round. We have different coffee regions in different parts of the country with different climates. And based on that, when this region is has the main harvest, this one has a very tiny harvest. When this one is not producing, this one is producing. And we have that in multiple areas of the country. So Colombia, as an origin, has coffee 12 months a year. You don't find that in other countries. In other countries, it's like one harvest. You know that good Kenyans always in Australia, they normally land around March or something like that. You know that. Good Ethiopians always around here. Good this. In Colombia, you as an origin, any month of the year that you go, there will be a region at peak. Now, that gives variety to those baristas trying to do a career there, right? Like there's always fresh coffee. And then this is where actually in Colombia, kudos to all the Colombian producers and that are always trying to get the new thing, trying to cross varieties, trying to get new varietals based on agronomy structure, like we have better roots or just cap profile. And you call it sometimes that's we sometimes Colombians take that to an extreme where there's a new variety every week. There's apparently, and that's where all the marketing, that's where the Colombians, so you want marketing? Well, we can be creative too. Yellow Bourbon, pink Bourbon, green Bourbon,
Rainbow Bourbon.
No jokes, no jokes. We have got into some points that are like a little bit too extreme, but hey, that needs to happen to understand where and when it's too far.
Go too far and come back.
And come back.
Exactly.
But you cannot cap that. You cannot cap innovation, trying, creativity. Then it's like, hey, it's okay to say, hey, that's too far. That's okay.
Now, let's quickly just talk about the coffee professionals. What do you think are the biggest challenges for coffee professionals wanting to progress their career?
Challenges. Look, access to technologies, right? Like if we want to compare origin coffee professionals and producing coffee professionals, well, clearly it's in Europe, in Asia, where you find all the technology, right? Technology in roasting, technology in brewing, technology in, right? You call it coffee machines. Where are they built, right? Coffee roasters, manufacturers, where are they built? And from there, you start going down in every little thing of the scales, these, all the, and even not only that, knowledge. Let's talk here. It's not only about technology, it's about knowledge. And the thing is that maybe in origin countries, there's not so much space given to create knowledge. I do believe we have the skills to do it, but maybe there are no spaces focusing on that. And this is maybe when we're talking about challenges. So origin countries, there's not much access to that, or it's harder to get. Consuming countries, there's not much access to multiple variety of fresh produce, right? Like in Colombia, we can have a new coffee every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I can get a new lot of a new experiment. Try a different thing. Hey, producer, try this new thing. Did not work. Try it again. Did not work. Try it again. Try it again. Try it again. I can do this all year round. In here, it's expensive and you're limited to what is in the country. Hey, I want to try. Cool. Order in 4 months is here. In 5
There's
months.
been a delay. The
Correct,
shipping.
correct. 1 month is here. Then try. Not good again. So you have twice a year you can do that. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's challenges in
that's
both
cool,
sides. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool because in that one reply, you've highlighted all of these challenges of just access to information, equipment, maybe kind of technology, and then also this incredible power that coffee producing baristas and roasters have in that feedback loop, that immediacy of a feedback loop and connection with producers, and the deep dive into that. Like imagine the learning cycle that those professionals must have open to them. Like you said, a barista or a roaster here gets that, they have a conversation over email or Skype, once or twice a year with their, with the folks they're sourcing from, go, oh yeah, that harvest was good, that one a little bit less, whatever. But then suddenly you've got this amazing feedback loop that I think it's a real power to that, yeah.
But you know what? Like before we move on from that topic, now that I think about it, what's the real challenge? And I'm going to say this to everyone at origin countries. Man, like I say things that some people are going to hate me for this, but I just have to do it. And it's, what's the real challenge is not only access. To me, the real challenge is belief. It's about mindset. And I said that in a personal aspect, like it took me years to start believing that Latinos than an immigrant can play at the same level to all the greats from Europe, Asia, USA, Australia, right? So it's not about being white people, not about that, but it's about because there's been historically that lack of representation of Latino baristas at the very, very high level, coffee professionals. There's always this belief that we're not good enough. We cannot do it. We could not. That's something for the big boys. And I think that's the biggest challenge right now. So is it easy? No, it's not easy. But you know what? Now that I lived in Australia for that long, it's not easy to do it here either. You know, like in order for someone to go and play at the big boys table, it needs to work really hard. It needs to get there, gaining like and deserving that space there. Same applies for Latinos. It's gonna be hard, yes, but it is possible. And I think that's the biggest challenge we have right now is that mentality. And I think the first thing we need to stop exporting is mindset and belief, because everyone that starts believing this then goes and work in another country and stays there. So I think we need that. We need that kind of mindset and belief needs to go back to origin and, hey, we can do something from here.
And I think that really comes back to the idea that we talked about the brand, right? It's the intangible benefits that come back about not just the value externally of having a strong brand of what does it mean to be a coffee professional in this particular region, but also that internal brand perception where you kind of seeing yourself and saying, oh, this is what we can represent. We have this kind of strengths and this capability and this, we have the right to be in this space. Because I think that's true as well for not just Colombian coffee professionals, but coffee professionals in all kinds of different regions that haven't kind of traditionally or classically been big noted up on the stage. Sometimes the brand of Australian coffee is sometimes completely overblown, and really, there's a little bit too much patting ourselves on the shoulder about that kind of brand culture. But I think it's super valuable, as you're saying, we can also be this level. We have these amazing capabilities.
But Carlos, can I ask you, obviously you felt like those challenges yourself that you just described, how did you overcome those barriers?
Look, this is what I said. Like I said on a personal level, it took me a while to go through that. Let's talk about the competition side of things, okay? Because it's very personal to me. I tried competing for many years and I was not getting the results I wanted, right? And maybe I realized that I was trying to be or act or perform or brood or express myself on stage like what others were doing, and like who were the ones doing good or are the ones doing good all the time? Well, the Europeans, the Asians, but never the Latinos, right? So no one told me, no, don't be you. No one told me that. But unconsciously, I was like, if I want to be good, I want to be like them. I need to be like them. So I was kind of like not being myself. And guess what? I was not doing any good. I think it was when I changed my style to, you know what? Now let's be me. It's gonna be different. It's gonna be very different to them. It's gonna be out of the norm for here. Yes, but this is when people started to, look at this Latino boy. Who's this guy competing? Who's
Bring on
that guy?
full cast.
Correct, exactly. Bring on the full Carlos Escobar experience. And so maybe that was too much at the beginning. But again, maybe it's okay sometimes to go a little bit too much. And that's when you know what? That was a bit too far. That was too much Carlos Escobar. Now
Never.
you cannot cope with it, okay? You cannot cope with that. Now let's take it back a tiny bit. And then when I started to see that was well received by some and maybe understanding that, you know what? So great advice for people like immigrants or Latinos or like people that play from the minorities. Yeah, maybe not everyone will love what you're doing. But hey, it's the same when you're here. When you're an Australian starting something new, not everyone will love you. But I think here the mindset is, and that's okay. And that's okay. So now it's adopting that mindset of not everyone will love what you're doing, but that is okay. Some people will do. And I think maybe when you come from that, you're like, you're so, sensible to those like criticism or hard feedback. And you're like, oh my God, okay, no, not through here. Hey, that's okay. Take it. But it's okay not to be loved by everyone.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you had that really big mind shift and experience as you went into competition space and made this huge global transition, right? You moved from Colombia to Australia. But what about for folks who are listening who might not have the resources or might not be able to travel kind of internationally or to different markets? How would you recommend they go about kind of gaining those different perspectives and new skills?
Good question. You know what? Like, this is now one of the things that have changed the industry completely or bridged that gap between producing countries professionals and consuming countries professionals is social media and the internet, right? Like, now you can find anything in the internet, right? Anything through social media. And you know what? The communication with leaders, industry leaders, is now easier than ever, right? Like back in the days, it was so difficult. Like, you would never send an email or something like that to a guy like that and expect a reply or something. But now, social media, I think the coffee community is still such a small thing that everyone can be friends through there. And yeah, sometimes maybe someone needs to be more persistent than others. But hey, would like to ask you a question? I guarantee you, sooner or later, regardless how high that person is in the industry, would notice and say, "Hey, buddy, what's up?"
Yeah.
And I've seen that happening multiple times. Like, most of the leaders in the coffee industry are actually very generous with their time and that. Like, I don't see many names or figures in the industry being like, "Nah, it's a secret. I cannot tell you. I cannot tell you. No one knows that." No, man. Like, I think everyone is very happy to share experiences and give advices to people starting.
Well, to put it out there, I don't think we've ever asked anyone in the coffee industry to be on this podcast and they've said no. Regardless of stature or size or that kind of stuff, like, everyone has kind of been on board with that. Do you have any like specific courses or recommendations for online for someone that doesn't have that kind of access?
Look, not anything specific, but I think is picking the areas you want to focus on that you need to learn more. Well, a bit biased, but clearly everyone knows, like, one of my best friends in the world is Simon Gathering from Apax Lab. I believe he's perhaps one of the best coffee professionals out there in terms of knowledge.
And best looking.
100% as well, yeah. But it's all the French accent, But, like, if you want to understand or talk water, like that, for example, is like go immerse yourself in the world of Apex and understand what it does and ask Simon for guidance there. That, to me, that's one of the most valuable knowledge out there that everyone has access to.
Should we give out his mobile number right now? It's
exactly
1-833-9-4.
I think it's amazing because you're talking about a lot of how do people gain perspective on what's possible and kind of some of the skills. And I think there's people like yourselves who are starting up more locally. So I think the first step would be look locally, who's progressing, who, are they a stepping stone? Because they might be really generous about their information as well. And then kind of looking maybe to some other comparable markets could be great as well. If you're in Colombia, look to some of the amazing coffee roasters in Brazil. Look to some of the amazing the cafe operators who are doing things in Mexico City. These are really great, they're a similar experience, similar shared context, but, it might be able to provide you with some different insight.
That's a great point. And to touch on that is like an advice for everyone starting there is like, start small and then build from there. Maybe not like, I don't know anything about coffee. Let's ask the world champion. And hey, how can I, start small.
Don't ask questions you can put through ChatGPT.
Start local, then build from there and build your knowledge, your base, and move from there up. Yeah.
And so to get a little bit more practical, so we've been talking about, we've got people fired up. I think anyone listening to this podcast is going to be like, all right, I can do it. I'm going to get out there and hustle. What are some practical things for if someone's in a producing country and wanting to start a career in coffee roasting or a small cafe? Aside from this kind of general research, what do you think the first steps are for them?
Look, first step is trying different coffees or different origins.
Differente coffee.
Correct.
Oh.
Well, that's even better. But yeah, I think that is the thing. Do not start only with one coffee only. And we're not talking here only origins. It can be within Colombia, within your own country, you are in Mexico. Okay, cool. But different farmers, different regions, different varieties. Understand the impact of each variety, regions, styles of farming. And that, I think, is what's going to give you a great, great perspective of where flavors can come from. And from there, that's when you take it and start building your own memories and pieces of knowledge to start building the whole thing together.
And I guess to pull this together from the discussion that we started at the beginning is we're talking about how more value can be created at origin in producing countries. What's happening with Differente, and how are you kind of seeing that leading the charge in, creating those brand stories and capturing more value?
Yeah. So look, I think the big thing here is something, a very personal opinion, but I think the next thing in the industry will be looking at freshness from a different point of view. So for years, the specialty coffee industry has been focusing or thinking that freshness is always the days after roasting. And now that I'm back in Colombia, if you ask me, that's not real freshness. Where freshness really matters is after processing, after harvesting. That's where freshness is. So people talk about a fresh coffee, which is 20 days after roast in Australia, but the greens have been sitting in a warehouse for 12 months. And that's fresh coffee. I'm going to quote Australian marketing. Freshly roasted. Freshly roasted. But how about freshly harvested? That's the real thing. Or would you go and it's a freshly baked banana bread with banana that has been produced a year ago? How fresh is that? Right? You would say yeah, but how fresh is the banana? That's the most important thing for the banana bread. But here, the marketing is all about, no, but it was baked this morning. Doesn't matter, the banana was a year old, but the bread, very fresh. An hour ago, right? So now my opinion, that's the next step in the industry. We want to talk about what's in the future in next 5-10 years is that let's start rethinking, reshaping the concept of freshness. And this is where there's a good opportunity for producing countries to start transforming. And this is where Differente takes place. So Differente, first of all, wants to change the perception of coffee roasted at origin is not good. Producing countries just produce green beans. We are the ones that know how to roast, how to brew, how to everything. So Differente wants to be that brand that changes that perception and say hey, I always say it's not about being better or being worse. It's just about being Differente. But it's hey, it's at origin, we can also transform coffee, roast coffee, and know how to brew it. But talking again about freshness is at origin, we can, as I said before, I can receive coffee that has been just a month getting stabilizing in a warehouse, roasted. And now the good things of logistics is that you can get a coffee roasted at origin in 4 or 5 days in another part of the world. So I think 5 weeks after roasting coffee, that the coffee was very fresh is way better than a week after roasting coffee that's been sitting in a warehouse for months.
Well said. Well said.
I love it.
And the last one, just quickly chiming in, just to finish off, what would one message you'd have for a young coffee professional that feels limited by where they live?
Just believe. Again, it's all about mindset. It's not only about access, it's about mindset. Believe that Latinos and immigrants, and we also belong there. And, you are a smartphone message away to talk to everyone in the industry that is happy to share experiences and guidance through there. So do not stay there. Just talk, ask, knock on doors, and believe that we all belong there.
Beautiful. Now, throughout this episode, you've already hit us with some great kind of one-liner takes. I've got that Coffee Freshness is about roasting. It's about from when it's harvested. We've got
Correct.
some other hits through there. But I'm going to give you the stage right now because I think it's time for an extra hot take with two sugars.
Okay. Hot take. Okay. Most coffee in Australia is not fresh.
Oof.
I'm going to leave it like that. So,
What? What do you mean? What do you mean?
So, hey, look, next time you buy your coffee, drink your coffee, maybe just the question is not how old it is after roasting, is like how long this coffee has been sitting in a warehouse. And when you start understanding what old coffee tastes like, man, like most, I'm not going to say all, but most coffee in Australia, it's showing big signs of age and quality. Yeah.
And you can tell this. So, Ben, I know we chatted about this like
Yeah.
right when we first started doing this pod together, we were chatting about it. What is that key tasting profile that you will know you've got old crop? Or what are some of those signifiers so people out there listening can be like, this is old?
Yeah, and I think it can show up in slightly different ways, but the way that people can mainly taste old or aged kind of coffee out is a distinctive paper or cardboard kind of taste. So it's in the aftertaste predominantly, but it's like when you tear off a little piece of paper and you like chew that when you're bored in a classroom, you know, you
Wait,
get
what?
that taste. You're never bored? You never
Why
bored?
would you
You're
do
just
that?
like, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, what am I?
Get this guy some food. He's just calibrating here. Ron's calibrating on old crop coffee. See that flavor in your mouth? That's what it's like.
Exactly.
But yeah, you're going to taste like a papery, like slightly wet cardboard, kind of musty taste in there. And unfortunately, it's not just Australia. It's globally, depending on where you're located. And there are all these different pressures, especially in Australia, about, well, I bought this coffee. It's kind of really expensive now. I have to use it. And unfortunately, you know, it gets pushed into the wrong categories. And I think we actually find this a lot in micro lots and filter coffee far too often because people have gone, I buy this expensive coffee. It hasn't moved as quickly as I thought it would. Now the green coffee is a little bit old, but I still got to keep roasting it and pushing it out there. And unfortunately, you get a batch brew that's like, well, this could have been great coffee once, but now it's just paper.
Yeah. We were drinking a cup of excellence, you know, we won't talk about where, but I remember us just being like, whoa, this just tastes like a big old bag of Reflex.
Yeah, nice.
Probably an Australian paper company for those that don't know.
Photocopier paper brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, look, I don't actually have a hot take for today, but Ben, I'm throwing to you because it looks like you got something brewing in your eyes, something spicy.
Look, I've been inspired by Carlos. I've been thinking as we've had this conversation about how do we put producers at the top end of the brand and how do we really focus on that? So my hot take is get rid of blends.
Ooh, only single.
Yeah.
Is this your subtle way of saying you want to be single?
No.
Oh, that's what you heard it here first.
My beautiful wife, that is not the message at
said,
all.
nope.
I am blended with you forever.
There you go. All right.
But on a coffee front, blends like an outdated mode of thinking about specialty coffee where we've kind of got this fixation with the idea that one coffee from one origin or one producer can't be balanced in the cup and can't give us kind of a complete experience. It's like we're saying, well, you have to have a medium body and a medium acidity and a medium flavor. And it's just not true. You know, in the most up-to-date world of coffee with specialty, we can have a beautiful milk coffee, a black coffee with just one single origin. I mean, heck, look at barista competitions and brewers competitions. It's not like they're creating blends. But what it's going to allow us to do if we just do single origin coffees is to really put that producer and where the coffee is from front and center. And we just need to rip the Band-Aid off, go full single origin.
And I think it's going to educate the consumer more because, to be honest, blends are probably just there as a way to make a consistent coffee all year round so that customers are used to the same flavor.
Absolutely.
Let's get the singles on there so people can actually know that coffee is an ever-changing, ever-evolving thing.
Good.
Yes.
Last thing there, I just realized blending is also the way to make producers anonymous, like no one knows where the coffee comes from, because it's a blend. It's house blend. That's the word here.
It also devalues
correct.
the
It's like the
producer.
way to literally say, doesn't matter, it's just coffee. The moment there's no blends, it's like, where the coffee comes from? At least you will give an origin. And then clearly some cafes will say, from this region, from this farmer, from this. Then there's someone who produced that coffee, not just house blend.
But I just wanted to give you the floor and be like, is there someone else in the industry that you think needs a little shout out, a little love?
Look, no, Simon Gathering.
Simon was
first
it?
of all,
I agree.
He's competing this weekend, by the way.
He's competing tomorrow at 110.
By the time you all see this podcast out there, he's a national champion. And well, regardless, let's all get together behind the Australian champion, hopefully Simon. But for next year's World Championship, it would be awesome to see Australia doing good.
Yep. Apex won, the AeroPress champs, with Nemo. So coming up now, we've got to take out the Brewers as well. Mate, thank you so much for joining us. That was, to be honest,
Thank you.
This is why we do the podcast. Podcasts like that is exactly why we do that. Sharing the story, sharing the community. That was amazing. I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
And on the other side, to those, maybe that are listening, knock on the door over here. Give him a message if you need. No stupid questions like how fine should I grind? But, if you've got something you want to do, I'm sure he'd be happy to listen. Where can people find you?
Man, thank you so much for the space. So mainly at Differente Coffee, Differente with double F. So like different with an E at the end, and coffee. That's where you can find the brand. And just maybe for all those cafes doing guest roasters, stop looking always at the big boys from Asia, Europe. Maybe start thinking on producing countries there. And at carlos.esco.bar. And social media is the best way to reach out. Thank you so much for the space. And hey, love the space. Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you so
much,
much.
Carlos.
Ben, as you were heading to your event this weekend, you said they sent you a pigeon mail, right? And there was a little note
Just like
attached
flying in.
that was specifically about Carlos. What did it say?
It said, you have to compliment him on his beard or he gets very sad.
I was going to say it's a beautiful beard. It's so well groomed. Can I brush it once we're done?
Yes, you can.
Oh, thank goodness.
Voluminous,
Okay, on that note, I'm going to get off here because I need to go brush some beard. See you later, guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yes.
Bye-bye.